So we have George Strickland with us today. Thank you, George, for joining us all the way from your studio. We have some beautiful paintings right around you. So yeah, thanks for coming aboard here and sharing your knowledge of art with all of us.
Sure.
Yeah, so thank you. So we're going to talk about why paint from life. Why is that important, George? And all these years that you've been painting and drawing, why painting from life and drawing from life too, that's kind of goes hand in hand, is important.
Well, I think that, a lot of us grow up and we believe that, photographs are a good way to paint because it's nice and comfortable sitting in a studio painting and, you can take all the time in the world. But I think when you paint from life, especially outdoors, you're kind of put into the fire and you learn to adapt to that and learn to assess what you're looking at and find, the painting that's there. And that's a whole different approach than just sitting in a studio and painting. I know when I began my journey in art, I was painting, coming from a commercial art background. I kind of approached painting like I did my commercial art. I would take, a roll or hundreds of photographs, then get back to my studio and pick the very best one and then paint it from the photograph. And, I did that for quite a while and I did okay, but I didn't progress much in my painting ability. So I took a workshop from a guy named Jim Wilcox up in Wyoming, and he had us painting outdoors. And wow, it was difficult at first, but it really opened my eyes to how different painting from life is than painting from photographs, and how much more you see, and how to distill things down became a real big factor in painting from life because we see so much, and it just improved my painting from that point on so much faster than my painting was improving when I was just painting from photographs. So I just think that, all of the good painters that I know paint from life and they do it on a regular basis. And that doesn't mean they don't paint from photographs anymore. But I think once you paint from life and you do that for a while, you learn to apply that knowledge to the photographs that you're painting, and you can make it look much more realistic.
Yeah.
For one thing, photographs tend to make shadows dark and colorless, and maybe the lights are good, or the shadows are good, and the lights are all washed out in your photographs. Now, with Photoshop and some of the modern technologies of digital art, you can manipulate much better than we used to with slides and photographs. But even then, working from life teaches you how to see things correctly, and painting from photographs does not.
Okay. What was your biggest frustration or challenge right in the beginning when you went outside to paint? If you can remember back, what was the thing that kind of was like, oh man, this is just so much. It would be so much easier just going back to your photographs. So what was the big frustration or challenge right off the bat when you set up outside?
Well, painting from things in the studio, like still lifes, is not too big of a challenge compared to going outside and painting, because outside You have to deal with the sun moving quite rapidly. So in order to paint a scene, you have to paint quickly.
Yeah.
Which means you have to assess things quickly, and you have to be able to have all of your materials and your equipment, be accustomed to that, and how to set it up quickly, and how to get to painting quickly, because it's all about time. Plus, you have an atmosphere that changes with the light. You have wind. You have people sometimes walking by wanting to talk to you and question you about what you're doing. There's all kinds of distractions, and it's a big world when you're painting outdoors. It's not, the nice, quiet solitude that you have inside of a studio. It's just there's a lot of things happening, and learning how to deal with that can be challenging at first, but just like anything that you do a little bit of, and more as you gain ability, it becomes easier and easier. So I think at first it seems like it's overwhelming, but then before long it seems like second nature.
Yeah, it's that is so true. How long do you think, in your opinion, when you started seeing improvement in your work after you started going outside? Was it weeks, months, many years? It's different for everybody, but what?
It is.
Yeah.
It is, and I think each individual has a different kind of speed that happens, because I think we all, we're all programmed a little bit different, and some of us learn things very quickly, and others, take more time. They're more meticulous and more plodding, and I'm kind of that way. I'm kind of a plodder, but the good thing about plodding is you stay steady, and you make a point to hang in there and see it through until you see some progress. And in my case, I saw progress within about 2 months.
Oh, well, okay.
And but it's like watching a child grow. Your progress can't always be seen readily, but it's happening, and it happens internally in your head. You're learning how to see things correctly. You're learning how to do things faster, and you're learning how to assess and be more proficient at your craft. So, you can sometimes, stand back and see that progress, but most of the time it's just happening on a daily basis, incrementally, and you don't feel it or see it, but it is happening.
That's a great answer. So but within that 2 month period, you probably were putting a lot of time into it. So it does matter, how many hours you put into those 2 months that you're talking about too. You're probably hitting it pretty hard in those 2 months, I'm assuming.
Well, I think painting from life, whether it's still life or whether it's painting portraits or painting outdoors, is kind of like painting on steroids. I mean, it is going to accentuate your learning curve, because it's the very best way to see things. It's the very best way to put yourself in the fire and be made to get better. Whereas, we humans just adapt to things, and we have that ability that, when we're kind of forced to do something, we accommodate that, and it sometimes it happens very quickly, and but it does happen, and so everybody that sticks with it will see great progress. Like I say, I just don't know a really good artist that doesn't paint from life quite often.
Yeah, so you can see right away if someone just hasn't spent time outdoors. You can see it in their,
See it.
yeah, right away, right off the bat. Yeah. What are some of the telltale signs right away that you see that that person really hasn't spent much outside?
Well, you can tell their values will be off, and a lot of times the color will be greatly exaggerated. Uh, the shadows and the lights uh, will have the shadows may be very dark and very lifeless, and the sometimes the colors can be kind of pastel or dead or too bright,
Mhm.
because there's just a big difference in seeing things with our eyes than seeing a photograph that's an interpretation of that. And I think it also stimulates the part of our brain that is creative and helps us see uh, things that are important to us one thing at a time. Whereas when a photograph is in front of you, you kind of see the whole thing, the totality of something, and everything might be sharp, or you see it through the photograph's eye, which is many times distorted and definitely skewed in some way. So those reasons kind of really are make for a telltale uh, assessment of somebody that hasn't done it from life.
Yeah. So yeah, yeah, that's true. You can see it right away. When someone goes outside, what are you looking for when you're scanning or looking at an area to paint? What is some of the big points that you're looking for?
When I leave to go painting, and I do it quite often, my wife says, where are you going? And I usually answer, I don't know. I'm just going to go find a painting. And sometimes I go to, the reason I do that, and the reason I tell her that, is because I've picked out spots before that I plan to paint, and I'll go there, and it's nothing like it was the day that I saw it, and the day that I plan to, sometime come back and paint. Uh, it's just not quite the same sometimes. So I've learned that when it comes to finding art, it's a good idea just to look around and take your time, walk, and soak it all in until you start seeing paintings. And that usually happens with me when I'm doing a lot of painting outdoors. I can see paintings everywhere. And when I stay away from painting, sometimes I'll drive 100 miles and not find a painting. And it's pathetic, but I think that's just the way it works. But usually I'm looking for, something that strikes me, my personality. And, things that have contrast, or things that have beautiful color, or nice shapes. It can be many different things, but they're usually um the opposites of things, something really dark against something really light, or something colorful against a broader gray area, or the texture of things, or the different things that can appeal to people are endless. And um, it's really hard to pinpoint exactly what I'm going to be looking for, but usually when I slow down wherever I am, I can find a painting, and I just start seeing it as if it's already painted, and that really helps me start with my process of putting that on a canvas.
Okay, so you have an internal thing that happens first. It's that emotion first, or is it the opposite? Are you looking at more fundamental stuff, or is it emotion first? What do you connect with? What out of the two? You know, the
I,
intellectual or the passion part?
it's emotion, and it catches my eye, and then I figure out what is it about that that's really appealing to me. Why do I like it? What visual qualities does this scene have that really is pulling me in and wanting me to paint it? And you know, if I start analyzing that, then I can start kind of prioritizing the things that are important to me about the scene I'm looking at. And that in itself is like a guideline of how to approach my painting. And to be sure that, you know, as my painting progresses, I hold on to that important aspect of what I saw, to hold on to that throughout my painting.
Okay, so you can have the heart or the soul touched first, and then you start painting. But technically, it happens too where it doesn't quite work out. Is that true? I mean, you know, you can have something that you like, but as you go about it, does that happen too?
It has happened to me that way.
Yeah.
Usually, I believe when that happens, I just didn't take the time to really look at the scene and to find out, you know, what it is that I wanted to hold on to, what was important to me about the scene. And you know, it's like a big plan that you start out with, and then as your painting progresses, uh, then you move on to different priorities in your painting progress. You know, like you're doing the big broad things at the beginning. The big broad things are usually the ones that attracted you to the painting to start with. And then you finish up with the details. And I think that's a great way to approach looking at life for paintings, looking at scenes, looking at those big broad things that the scene is made up of. And it's usually about 5 or 6 big shapes that really make up the scene. And once you have that down and you have the right values and the right colors, uh, and you've designed it, you know, maybe move things a little bit here and there, depending on, you know, where you are as an artist, can influence how sophisticated some of those moves are. You know, like at first, I think it's good for people just to go out and paint what they see. Try to paint exactly what they see the way it is. And then as they progress, to start putting their own spin on things and exaggerating and subordinating things as they see fit to make their own statement. So I think, you know, it depends on where you are as an artist. Uh, that really determines how your approach is to painting.
Yeah, I think that's a perfect way of saying it. So the reason I'm just asking the emotion part, the heart, you know, the soul part, and then the tech, you know, the more the fundamental part is that, I mean, they're tied together. I understand, but we do have to have um, sort of, you don't have to have, but there is sort of an order of things, and that's why I see sometimes students, because a lot of art students listen to this. I think sometimes their emotion gets ahead of their technical ability too, and I know I'm at fault of that too. When I was a younger painter, that I just was touched emotionally by it, and I wanted to paint it, but the technical ability was not there. So having those fundamental skills down is, as you said, it's, you know, it is important to have that. But as you said, just go outside and paint too. Just fumble
That's,
your way through it in a way. Yeah.
but I think it is important to have, you know, I've read a lot of books, I've taken a lot of workshops, and the great thing about the time that we're living in is that there's so much available for artists to learn so readily. and so easily. At one time was not there before. It was not there and way back when. People had to read. They had to go to art schools. They, getting information on how to do things was quite another thing than it is these days.
Yeah.
So I think that really helps, to get good instruction and to start out in a correct way. Because, you can go down a road that is the wrong road. It's just a dead end. If you try to learn by yourself and try to become an artist, it's a very slow process trying to do it by yourself without getting some knowledge about how to do it and the correct way to do it. And, finding the kind of process that aligns with your personality. And what I mean by that is that, some people, like I say, are plodding and meticulous. Other people, like to go by feel, and they like to go quickly. And I think those two traits kind of demand different approaches to painting, because I think it's very hard if you're meticulous to paint very loose. It can be done, but I think you're kind of going against your personality, your inward personality that is kind of directing your life. And if you're you don't have the patience for that kind of thing, then you're more spontaneous. Then you need a more spontaneous type approach that fits that. And it's there, it's out there, and there's definitely different ways to approach painting. So, finding that and getting a good start down the correct way for each individual, I think really accelerates the progress that you're about to make.
Okay. Yeah. And there is no such thing as a outdoor painting style, right? And there's no, as you just mentioned, it's your own personality coming through. There is no, some people paint tighter outside, some looser, some.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's plein air painting is not a style. It's
Yeah.
an approach to painting, but usually it's done pretty quickly. Although I know a lot of great artists that go out day after day doing a large painting of the same scene, the same subject, and trying to paint big paintings that way. Yet weather has to kind of be kind to you, and you have to have continuity with that weather if you're going to do it in several days. But most of the time, if you go outside and paint a scene, you have to do it pretty quickly. So,
yeah. What is the time frame generally that one has for outdoor painting, roughly?
It depends on the size of the painting, and I try to get my students to do quick little studies so that they learn how to paint and assess things quickly.
Yeah.
And once you learn how to do that, then you can start doing larger paintings. I'd say like 912 to 1216 to even 16 by 20. You can learn to do those in a couple of hours, 2.5 hours, maybe 3 hours. Once you're past that, the scene has changed quite a bit, from the sunlight moving, the shadows moving, and so that's difficult when you start going past that, unless you have a photographic memory and you remember exactly the way it was.
Okay, so that's roughly, because the sun is moving. The sun is your clock ultimately. I mean,
It really is, and it's not only moving, but the color of the light changes very quickly too. If you start out, say, at 9 o'clock in the morning, and you go till noontime, your sun temperature is changing. The way it may have started out very warm at 9 o'clock, warm light, and then at noontime, it's just blasting a much uh, more brighter light,
Yeah.
and so it's totally different in that respect too.
And depending on the time of the year, like winter versus summer too, all those things too. So
Exactly.
yeah, it changes throughout the year. The same, if you would be looking at the same exact scene, painting it, it will be different in the summer versus winter, fall, all those.
Absolutely. And that compresses the morning and the afternoon compresses in the wintertime so that things really do happen much faster.
Yeah. George, what do you do with these outdoor paintings generally? Do you tend to hold on to them? They're more valuable for you for larger paintings, or do you sell some of them, or how do you handle the outdoor pieces as far as
Well, I approach it. There's two different, in my opinion, there's basically two big categories of outdoor painting. And one is just to learn and to do studies that are for a larger painting. And sometimes they're very quick. They can be very small. And sometimes I do multiples of the same scene. If I want to do a larger painting of something, I might do multiples of the same scene uh, in a day or in a progression of days, and try different compositions and see which painting, which viewpoint, which composition and colors that I like the best, and then make a larger version of that. That is accompanied, of course, by photographs that I've taken during those painting periods. And the other kind of painting is the one that's so popular now, is a plein air show that you've been invited to, and you're obligated to do these paintings on location and put those paintings in frames and put them up for sale. Usually, in some cases, the next half hour after you finish, or at the end of the week. And that's a whole different story. And with that, if I'm doing that kind of thing, I go out. If I'm invited to a plein air invitational somewhere, I go there, and I go ahead of time, and I go around and find places that I want to paint, and I make note of what time I saw it, and if I like the scene at that time, or if it might be better hours later. And sometimes I'll do thumbnails and kind of get a leg up, so that when when they blow the whistle, so to speak, and start painting, I'm really, I have a leg up, and I know what I'm doing, and I'm very efficient at getting to my spots and painting them. So those are two different approaches. And of course, the latter that I was talking about really requires a lot of speed, efficiency, and there's not a lot of room for error. Uh, you know, Usually you do a few paintings that you may not use in a competition, but for a general rule, you want to have a lot of winners. So it requires you to put more thought into it, but yet be fast.
Okay. Over the years, how has your outdoor painting evolved, basically? What have you seen over the years?
When I first started going outdoors, it was all about mechanics and learning how to see correctly, see see things and assess them correctly, and try to make that try to translate what I see into paint. And that's a mechanical thing that you learn, and by doing a lot of paintings, you see how each painting has a certain process that is much like the last painting you did, and yet you also see by doing a lot of paintings how everything is different and it has its own characteristics. And it's mechanics really that you're learning about how to see, how to match the values and the colors that you see. And once you learn that, then I think you start being on another trend, which I'm on now, is just I just want to paint my version of things and to have uh, my view and my vision in my paintings, not necessarily painting exactly what I see. I may want to exaggerate something, a color. I may want to exaggerate the size of something or move a mountain over or move the trees over to suit my composition a little better. So I think, as you paint, you can become a little more sophisticated in the way you approach your painting. And so you have, different goals as you're painting, uh, as your process moves along and you learn how to paint, that your goals change a little bit, and that's just a normal thing for everybody.
Yeah, yeah, that's why I'm asking these questions, because you're a very seasoned painter, and also painting from life. And I try to not to differentiate. I think that's the what's going on out there in the last, I don't know, 20 years, that this whole plein air painting, which is really outdoor painting, it's taken on, like they're trying to separate the two as a different thing. But it's, as I'm sure you agree, it's not a separate thing. It's one feeds into the other, meaning studio painting and your outdoor painting feeds into.
Absolutely, absolutely. And it's amazing how the plein air painting helps the studio painting, and the studio painting helps the plein air painting, because it's all art. And as long as artists are staying busy and being productive and trying to learn and to get better, uh, all of those processes are going to help with their ability, and they add up and accumulate. Uh, your arsenal of things that you have to use to make a good painting. And I think we get influenced also by painting artists and their paintings that we see around us, and we sometimes get infatuated with the way an artist is painting, and we want to try some of the things that we see in them, and that's good too. And like I said earlier, we have such a great opportunity these days with the internet to see a lot of art and to really see the things that appeal to us, and to use some of those things that other people have found in our art, and the accumulation of all of those from different paintings and different people really make up our style, combined with our personality.
Yeah, and you actually have a video series with us about that. There are street scenes that you're painting, and I think if you guys check that out, go to our website, you'll see that George has a video package with us, and you can kind of see some of these things that George has been talking about with painting. You'll actually see it in action. It is in the studio, but again, it's accumulation of him painting outside. That's all that knowledge kind of accumulated in these videos. So just wanted to throw that out if someone's interested in George's not technique, but the way he kind of approaches things.
Yeah, and it's also the way you see things, and the way what appeals to one person may not appeal to another.
Yeah.
At the same scene, you may be looking at an ocean view, and what one artist wants to paint is the surf and the coastline, and another artist standing right next to them may be wanting to paint the ocean and the sailboats way out in the water and the clouds that are near the horizon, or the buildings that are off to the side. So I think when we're out and we see things like that, we have to paint what is important to us and the scenes that strike us, and our likes and dislikes can't be hidden. Really, they come right out the end of our brush. If you connect with what you're painting with, it really does show.
Yeah, if it comes from the heart and you care about the subject matter and you put your time into it, that's very true. It comes out 100%
Absolutely.
at the other end. What is one tip that you can tell them right away that anybody that wants to paint outside or they're new to painting outside, anything that they can take away here just at the end? Anything, just one little thing? It's always fun to have one. And I know it's hard to pin it down to one thing, but if there's anything that you can say, hey, kind of keep with this at least for now, or I don't know, anything like that, you think?
Well, I think it's the one tip that really is an absolute, and it works every time, is put the time in doing it, and really work at it on a regular basis, and to try to keep learning and improving. Uh, a tip, about how to do something. I think that takes a little practice and demonstration on how to do it. But I think it's always good for people to realize drawing is important. If you're interested in painting, uh, get you some drawing books, take a workshop, uh, look at some videos, uh, figure out, how to see simply big shapes. And those big shapes, I see them by squinting. And I think squinting is uh, one of the great techniques that we're able to simplify what we're looking at. And painting is all about simplifying what you're looking at so that you can describe it with paint. And that's just the way painting is. It's not painting with light, it's painting with paint. And it's limited on what it can do. So squinting really helps you do that. It helps you see the big shapes. It helps you meld the values of things together, and it helps you see things broadly. And at the beginning of a painting, you want to see things broadly, and then as your painting progresses, you want to be going into details at the very last point.
Okay, so squinting is a big one to take away. Yeah,
I would say squinting is one of the biggest things.
okay. That's a good one. Sounds simple, and it is simple, but it's, I think, a lot of times we don't do it enough. I think
It takes practice, and you have to stay with it. But I think immediately people can squint and they can see how it really simplifies shapes, and it simplifies values, and if you can paint with the simplicity that you see squinting, not in the value necessarily, but with the simplicity that you see as you're squinting, your paintings will improve quickly.
That's a good one. Any deceased artists that top of the head you kind of say, hey, make sure you kind of look at this person's work, or any particular that that you've always kind of come back to? Is there a group of them, or just a school of artists of the past?
Gabor, that's a toughie because there's so many.
Yeah.
There's so many, and it's apples and oranges too. It's but one of my favorite artists of all time was Nikolai Fishin.
Okay.
I just love the way he drew and the way he put paint down. Is the way he could paint spontaneously or draw spontaneously and yet have little tight areas that were very meticulous, and then other parts of a painting or drawing that just was so loose. It was so carefree almost. So I like that kind of thing, and I like paintings to have that quality too. So artists that have that those two things combined in a painting really appeal to me, and there's a big long list of them.
Yeah, I bet. Yeah, it's there's not one thing, and I think that's a sign of a good artist is that you look at many, not one particular. I think that could be dangerous. I think if you're looking at one particular one all the time.
Uh, that's absolutely true. Sometimes that happens, you know, if you just learn from one person and one person that you really admire, you can begin to take on the look and the traits completely. And uh, I think you need to find your own personality sooner or later. It's good to copy paintings. It's good to copy styles, what have you. But what you want to do is find your own voice and your own style, and not be a bad copy of another artist.
Yeah, that's so true. Well, thank you, George, for coming here and sharing your knowledge today with all of us.
Sure, happy to be here, and I've enjoyed talking with you.
Wonderful. We'll see you next time, George.
All right.